In this episode, we take a look at how the SD10 gets a speed recorder, we check in on how the nose job's coming along, as well as the completion of the MP15, or, well, close to it, and then finally check out what the Curmudgeon's gripe of the week is this week. All in this episode of SOO The Milwaukee Road. Alright, we're fixing to put a speed recorder onto these SD10 trucks. This is a common part found on locomotives. Speed recorder is made by Detail Associates, the TK2807. We've got three pieces, this guy, and this guy. I end up having to drill out the center portion to make sure that the first part can fit down in nicely. I don't glue this in. It's press fit because I'm going to take it back out and drill it out as well. And I drill it out just hopefully to ease the process of being able to install it. I use a needle nose pliers to put it in. He gone.
Let's see that in an instant replay.
He gone.
Ooh, the miraculous disappearing part trick. Thankfully, I found the part and installed it here. And with it safely installed, now I move on to putting the wire on. This is just a piece of wire that is slightly stripped to be able to have the insulation slid off the end. I end up using this pin to be able to line it up and hopefully slide this on a little bit easier than with the part that flew across the room. Here we go. We've got it installed. It's on here. I'm going to adjust this, of course, the length and be able to put it up to the underside of the car body, but it's all set to go. All right, locomotive wizards, how many MP15s did the SOO line own prior to the 86 merger? Was it A, 32? B, 10? Are you thinking it might have been C, 2? Or is it going to be D, 0? I know you might want to call or text somebody, but Colin knows the answer. Alright, it's time to cut that Lines West cab free from the base. It takes a little bit of doing, but I use an extremely sharp X-Acto knife and I just start whittling away.
Wait for it.
Alright, we've broken the cab free from the base. As you can see, there's a lot of parts still yet to clean out. Again, take your time when you're going through this process. It's definitely worth making sure you don't hustle through, because in the end you get a nice product like this. There's a little bit of cleaning yet to do on this, but we're going to test fit this onto the cab. But before we do so, we need to cut the old nose off the cab. And what I use here is a Dremel tool, and I just obviously will buzz through both sides and remove the cab. Alright, there we have it. I end up having to remove a few other things, and the pieces that I remove off of the actual car body are these lines here. I moved the horn as well, which has the two tabs that are bent down with the brass horn. I straighten them and pull it out. There you go. We'll have to fill these holes in.
Holes! I need holes!
But the cab itself has been test fit to be able to at least get a good look at it here. We got grab irons and a few other details to address, but we're getting ourselves there.
Gotta get you some.
Alright, here we have an SDL39, one of my favorite locomotives. It arrived in a little less than desirable condition. As you can see here, I end up disassembling the locomotive anyhow because I'm going to go through and get this thing repainted. The contacts were the biggest issue. There's a problem where one of them was broken, but we'll address that down the road. We had a hand-painted frame, an orange-peeling nose, as well as the car body itself kind of had some issues, and, well, let's just say we're going to strip them. The trucks had a little bit of an issue too. Some paint got slopped on them when the side frames were painted. So what I ended up doing is taking a Dremel bit with a wire wheel and starting to get these things cleaned up. Ends up being kind of nice, not too bad. Alright, we're about halfway through the stripping process. I use an old toothbrush to be able to scrub the paint free. One of the things I did find is I used a Sonicare toothbrush to be able to help lift some of that paint. And as you can see, it took a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of time. I dip it into isopropyl alcohol as well as wash away. Now I organize the parts to make sure that everything goes back into where it belongs, because it makes the reassembly process just that much easier. As you can see, it's partially assembled and now fully assembled. The fully assembled state, the shell's not screwed on just yet because I'm putting a decoder buddy in by Nick's Trains. These are great motherboards with a 21-pin compatibility. I end up throwing a TCS decoder on. We'll take a listen. I've temporarily used double stick tape to stick the Nick's Trains decoder buddy onto the top of the motor, as well as screw the iPhone speaker to the end there. This isn't the final install, but it's definitely getting close. Alright, did anybody use their lifeline to phone a friend or text a friend? Maybe you reached out to our electrician Colin, who actually taught me this bit of information. The MP15s that were owned by the SOO line prior to the merger of 86 was D0, as the SOO line acquired 32 of the Milwaukee Road units. It just pained him to see that Milwaukee Road painted over. Alright, we're nearing the completion of the MP15AC, and I just wanted to touch on some of the updates that I did to this particular locomotive to go a little bit more in depth than what I've covered in the past. I ended up adding the grills, as I'd mentioned. That was by KV Models. This is an MP15 DC, but this is an AC unit, so I ended up having to cut up the grill that they provided and modify it to create and work in this application, which ended up working out nicely. I did end up adding an electronic bell, and I should say replacing, because the original one had gotten crushed in shipping, so I ended up replacing that. And I use Details West. In this particular case, it is EB337. It looks really nice. It is obviously to scale and works for this application. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you ever fuel filler caps that are on your Athearn locomotives, if you ever have touched them and they've gone flying off and they disappear, I end up replacing those, and I use Details West. This is Details West FF166, and this is just a good product to be able to replace those. And what I did is just drilled slightly into the actual metal tank, and was able to snugly fit these down in just a little bit of glue, got them fit in, so now if I bump them, they're not going to go flying. I did add a beacon. I did a lot of research on this, and the location of number 437, its beacon was on the back top of the cab. Often you'll find Milwaukee Road puts it right up above the engineer, but this is its location, and I ended up putting on one of the Details West beacons. It's a cord beacon. It's RB106, and those LEDs that I used within it, this is Evans Designs. They're orange Pico or Pico LEDs, and they end up fitting just nicely in there. They're so small, and the wire just snakes right in, and I'm able to wire that to the motherboard, and obviously you're going to have nice application with that. On the headlight front, I use these small, little tiny LEDs. They work really well. They're a pack of 10 for like 10 bucks. They're very inexpensive. I end up finding those online, and I end up putting them in one bulb per lens. And then the lenses are created out of these fiber optic lines. I've mentioned these in the past when I was covering the SD40-2 upgrade, but these are great to be able to replace those front lenses so you don't see the funky little LED in there, as well as you don't see what used to be in here as incandescent bulbs, which didn't look good at all. I ended up putting a sound decoder in. It's an ESU Loc sound decoder. It's version 5. And as I mentioned prior, the motherboard, this is the motherboard I use. It's a TCS Wow Sound motherboard. It has capacitors on it that keep power to the locomotive if it does go through a dead frog or a dead spot in the track. It's not how I'd rely on actually fixing your issues by putting it into locomotives. Fix your problem on the railroad. I'm really pleased with the results so far on the locomotive. I did a lot of research on the actual units. One of the magazines I suggest is Diesel Era. Diesel Era did this one here on the MP15s, and they do a lot of shots within. There's one funny thing I did find about this particular issue of Diesel Era. All the shots are from the front. There aren't any shots of the back. So as I went through and I was doing my research, I want to see the shots of the rear of the locomotive to be able to identify some of the parts, some of the details if I needed to add anything or remove anything. One thing I did find, and that was using the Milwaukee Road Volume 4. This covers the 4-axle EMD as well as GE locomotives, including the GP20 rebuilds. It ended up being a good reference, but when I was talking about the back of the locomotive, the white grabs going up into the cab, they're black. Athearn did them white, so I end up having to scratch off the white paint. They too are getting flat finished, but once I get them all applied, we'll get a look at this locomotive from a few different directions. And then the last detail that I didn't mention before, and you'll see her at the end in the video, but were some more small LEDs that I added to the locomotive that I think you'll like.
Alright, here's the Curmudgeon coming at you for the grab of the week. This week it's lights. I tell you right now, your mother always told you turn the lights off. Well, you need to do it on your railroad too. Sometimes your trailing units got headlights on, they got number boards on. Well, turn the lights off, unless the number board is actually indicating your train. I tell you right now, if there is anybody out there that doesn't turn off the lights, the old curmudgeon's gonna snap. Oh yes, I lose my mind when I see lights left on. So shut off the lights, and that's the curmudgeon's grab of the week. The old curmudgeon's gonna snap.
Be sure and hit the like button. You can click here to subscribe. You can also check out other episodes of SOO The Milwaukee Road, as well as take the tour of the GN in 1970.